On the morning of August 13th, 2018, a pregnant woman and her two young daughters were reported missing from their home in Frederick, Colorado. At first, it looked like a missing persons case. No signs of forced entry, no struggle, no clear explanation. But just hours later, something about the situation began to feel off. Because the husband, the last person to see them alive, stood outside his home speaking to the media. Calm, collected, asking for their safe return. And yet, there was something in the way he spoke that made people uneasy. Imagine this for a moment. Your family is missing, gone without a trace, and cameras are pointed at you. How would you act? Would you be frantic, overwhelmed, unable to process what's happening? Or would you appear composed? Shanann Watts had returned home late that night after a business trip. Security footage later confirmed her arrival. She walked into the house, and that was the last confirmed moment she was ever seen alive. Inside the home, everything appeared normal. Her phone was there, her purse, her personal belongings. Nothing suggested she had left voluntarily. And her two daughters, Bella and Celeste, were also missing. Now think about this carefully. If someone leaves their home, would they leave behind everything they need? Phone, keys, wallet? Or does that suggest something else entirely? From the beginning, investigators focused on timelines. Who saw them last? What happened during those early morning hours? And every path led back to one person, Chris Watts. He told police that he had left for work early that morning, that everything was normal when he left, that his family was still at home. But as the investigation continued, small inconsistencies began to appear. His statements didn't fully align with the evidence. And then there was something else. A detail that hadn't been immediately obvious. Chris Watts had been having an affair. Now think about this. When someone is living a double life, how often does that eventually surface? Because what investigators would uncover next would begin to change everything. Phone records, messages, conversations that revealed a different side of his life, a side that didn't match the image he presented publicly. And as those details came to light, the focus of the case began to shift, from missing persons to something far more serious. But even then, no one could have predicted what would happen next. Because within days, the truth behind what happened inside that house would begin to unravel. And when it did, it would reveal something far more disturbing than anyone expected. We'll come back to the timeline of that morning, because one small detail captured on camera would later become one of the most important clues in the entire case. And as investigators closed in, the question was no longer just where they were. It was what had already happened. As investigators looked closer at the morning of August 13th, 2018, one thing became clear. This case was no longer just about a disappearance. It was about what happened inside that house before anyone even realized something was wrong. Chris Watts told police that he had woken up early, that he got ready for work, and that when he left, his family was still inside. But there was something that didn't fully match that story. Security footage from a neighbor's home. It showed Chris backing his truck into the driveway, something he didn't normally do. He said it was to load tools for work, but when investigators reviewed the footage, they noticed how long he stayed there and how carefully he moved. Now think about this.
If you're just loading tools into your truck, would you need that much time? Or does that suggest something else was happening? Investigators began breaking down every minute of that morning. When did Shanann Watts arrive home? When did Chris wake up? When did he leave? Each detail mattered, because in cases like this, the truth is often hidden inside small inconsistencies. Then there was the behavior afterward. Chris spoke to police, to neighbors,
even to the media. He asked for his family to come back, appealed for their safety. But the more he spoke, the more something felt off. His tone, his body language. People watching began to notice it, and that created a shift. Because sometimes it's not just the evidence that raises suspicion, it's instinct. Now think about this carefully. Can you tell when someone is lying just by how they act? Or is that something we only notice after we already know the truth? As investigators continued, they uncovered more about Chris's personal life, the affair, the messages, plans that didn't include his family, a future that looked very different from the life he was living. And that raised a new question. Was there a motive? Because when someone stands to gain from a situation, it changes how everything is viewed. Meanwhile, search efforts continued. Friends, family, volunteers, all hoping to find some trace. But inside the investigation, the focus was narrowing. And then came a turning point. Chris agreed to take a polygraph test. Now think about this carefully. If you were innocent, would you agree to a lie detector test, or would you hesitate? During the test, his answers were analyzed carefully, and when it was over, the result was clear. He did not pass. That moment changed everything, because now investigators weren't just looking for answers, they were confronting him directly. And when that pressure increased, his story began to change. At first, he denied everything. Then, he admitted to something else, a version of events that shifted blame. But even that version didn't hold, because as investigators continued questioning him, the truth began to surface. And when it did, it was far more disturbing than anyone expected. We'll come back to that confession, because it becomes the moment where everything is finally revealed. But before that, there's something important to consider, because in many cases, the truth doesn't come out all at once. It comes out in pieces, and each piece changes the story. After failing the polygraph, Chris Watts was no longer just being questioned. He was being confronted. Investigators laid out the inconsistencies, the timeline, the evidence, and slowly, the version of events he had been repeating began to fall apart. At first, he offered a new explanation. He claimed that something had happened inside the home, that an argument had taken place, and in that version, he tried to shift responsibility. But even as he spoke, there were gaps, details that didn't align. Now think about this carefully. When someone changes their story under pressure, are they revealing the truth or just trying to protect themselves? Because what came next would remove any remaining doubt. As the questioning continued, Chris Watts confessed. He admitted that what happened inside the house that morning was not what he had told anyone. It wasn't a sudden argument. It wasn't something out of his control. It was deliberate. The timeline he had described, the normal morning, the routine departure for work, none of it was true. Instead, everything had already happened before he ever left the house. Now think about that carefully. If someone is able to act normal, speak calmly, and go about their day after something like that, what does that tell you about them? Because that contrast between appearance and reality is what made this case so disturbing. Investigators now had a confession, but they still needed to locate the victims, and that led them to a remote work site, a place Chris had visited earlier that day. It was there that they began searching, and what they found confirmed everything. The case was no longer a mystery. It was a complete reconstruction of events, a timeline that started inside the home and ended far from it. But even with the truth revealed, one question remained: why? Because understanding what happened is not the same as understanding why it happened, and that question is often the hardest one to answer. We'll come back to what followed the confession, because the outcome of this case would bring finality, but not necessarily understanding. And even now, it leaves behind something unsettling, not just about the crime itself, but about how easily it remained hidden until it was too late. After the confession, the case against Chris Watts moved quickly. There was no longer uncertainty about what had happened, no missing timeline, no unanswered question about who was responsible, only the reality of it. Inside that home, in the early hours of August 13th, everything had already changed. By the time the world began searching, the truth was already hidden. Chris Watts eventually pled guilty. He was sentenced to multiple life terms in prison without the possibility of parole. And just like that, the legal side of the case was over. But the story itself didn't end there, because this case left behind something deeper, not just about crime, but about perception. Because from the outside, everything had seemed normal: a family, a home, a routine life, nothing that suggested what was happening beneath the surface. Now think about this carefully. How often do we assume we understand people based only on what we see? Because this case challenges that idea. It shows how someone can appear calm, composed, even cooperative, while hiding something completely different. And that contrast is what continues to stay with people. The interviews, the footage, the calm voice asking for his family to come home. Knowing what had already happened at that point changes how those moments are seen forever. And that raises one final question. When someone is able to present one version of themselves while living another, how do you ever truly know who they are? Because in the end, this case is not just about what happened. It's about how easily reality can be hidden behind something that looks
completely ordinary. Thank you for listening.